Tumultuous year in South African politics, as though I need to tell you, from the change of power in the highest office to the drama between the DA and the Cape Town mayor. Let's take you back now over the past 12 months and the highlights and the lowlights of South African politics.
I have therefore come to the decision to resign as President of the Republic with immediate effect.
In February this year, former President Jacob Zuma finally bowed to pressure and quit. His nearly decade-long tenure was characterized by claims of corruption and alleged state capture by the Gupta family. And then it was time for a new dawn.
I declare the Honorable Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa duly elected President of the Republic of South Africa.
Zuma's allies also faced uphill battles. In May, Supra Mahumapelo was forced to resign as Northwest Premier. Violent demonstrations called for him to step down amid accusations of corruption and poor service delivery.
I also want to take this opportunity to thank the African National Congress for the deployment and for the ANC to agree that one must go on early retirement. And I also just want to say that I do not expect from the organization compensation in the form of a new position elsewhere, because the ANC doesn't owe us any positions.
When people abuse you, you must walk away.
Yes, yes.
Then came the nasty spat between the DA and former Cape Town Mayor Patricia de Lille. The party accused de Lille of corruption, something she vehemently denied. She dismissed the allegations as a smear campaign designed to tarnish her name. In October, de Lille quit as mayor and as a DA member.
You are dealing with an organization that's rudderless, that's leaderless, that can't give direction. And really, you know what? I am free now. I'm freed of this oppression and abuse. And I certainly don't care anymore.
The coalition governments in 3 DA-led metros also faced trouble. The EFF, ANC and the UDM teamed up against the DA and ousted Athol Trollip as Nelson Mandela Bay mayor.
We weren't present, and we believe that that was unlawful. The Municipal Structures Act is very clear in section 36(3). It says that the city manager should preside over the council meeting. Now, the city manager was present in the city. He wasn't incapacitated. In fact, he wasn't even approached by the MEC to go to the council meeting and to preside. The MEC simply chose to send somebody else to do that. We believe that's irregular and unlawful, and we'll be contesting that. And that's why I said to you, when you asked me, should you address me as the mayor or anything else, I believe I still am the mayor.
The DA challenged Trollip's removal in court but failed. And then there was the state capture inquiry.
So help me God.
Witnesses detailed how Zuma allowed the Guptas to influence government. Former Mineral Resources Minister Nwaka Ramatlodi told the inquiry Zuma auctioned off the country to the controversial family.
You can characterize that period as a season of madness in the organization. We couldn't understand the grip. You know, it's like a python, and when a python wraps itself around you, unless somebody takes out the tail from the soil, you are finished.
Madness reigned elsewhere as well, with politicians drawn into the VBS Mutual Bank mess. Nearly 2 billion rand was looted from the institution, leading to its collapse. A forensic probe named senior ANC officials, accountants, auditors, business people and the vendor king as beneficiaries of the crime. Brian Chivambu, the brother of EFF Deputy President Floyd Chivambu, allegedly pocketed nearly 17 million rand. Some of that money then reportedly made its way into EFF coffers.
It's pure insanity. It's madness of people who want to say that we received 10 million. If let's say, Let's leave being a journalist, be a patriot in South Africa, and go to a police station and say, here's the evidence that Floyd Shivambu received 10 million from VBS. Go to the police station and report that. There will never be any such. Also, the bank that I bank with would have called me in if I received 10 million rand to ask me, on what basis are you receiving 10 million rand? Because the regulations that deal with money movements in South Africa places an obligation on banks to caution its customers and its clients on the monies that are coming there and are not explained.
One of the hottest political topics of the year has also been land expropriation without compensation. After months of public comments and debate, a parliamentary committee recommended that Section 25 of the Constitution be amended. Both the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces have adopted the resolution.
The report before the House captures the views of South Africans. Their arguments enabled the committee to make a resolution which says Section 25 of the Constitution should be amended to allow for expropriation of land without compensation.
You must ask the one who came before you. He listens to ill advice from illiterates like things like this.
With general elections set for next year, 2019 is sure to be another fiery time in politics.
That report put together by my colleague Janke Tolme. It's Professor Sipho Seepe. It's always a pleasure having him on the show. And as we were both listening to that insert, Professor, I was taking notes. I mean, I've literally got an entire page of things we could possibly talk about. Yes. But if I had to hand you the poison chalice of telling me what you think our hottest topic of 2018 was, what is it?
Well, the first one is the removal of President Zuma. And it's also important to understand that the removal was not possible before he had he was no longer the president of the ANC. And what it actually shows is that the ANC is the strategic center of power, whether it is within the party and in government. Before then, the ANC struggled to remove him, despite all the noise that had actually been made. But once he was no longer in power, then the ANC was saying it's time to move on. But also they were eyeing the elections because the opposition party had made a meal out of Jacob Zuma. So the ANC felt that by removing him, they'll then be able to concentrate. But unfortunately, the balance of forces within the ANC did not indicate that major shift. Because one of the things that has been very clear is that when there was a moment for cabinet reshuffle, you found also many ministers who were sympathetic to Zuma being kept. And the ones that were removed are the ones without a major constituency. I mean, the media has been making or hounding people like Batabile Dlamini and Nomvula Mkonyane. And only recently, the president himself had said Batabile is doing a good job. But what he's also doing is wanting to let the courts dictate on that, because the DA has gone to the courts to say there's been a judgment against Batabile Dlamini, and which suggests she's unfit. But instead of Ramaphosa acting on that, he's actually leaving it to the courts. So that's a clever move. There's also been the removal of Tom Moyane. It's also significant. There's been a removal of the NPA boss, Sean Abrahams. So all these things suggest a certain change within the landscape politically.
So he wants to be seen as the president, to be voted for as a man of change. That's what he's cleaning house.
He's, well, some people could argue that he cleans house where it is within his possibility, but also he's fully aware of the balance of forces on the ground. This is why you still have Batabile, this is why you have Nomvula, despite the noise that has been created around these two people. But what it does is simply to say you can go so far and no further, and he understands that very well.
A Daily Maverick article coming out this week had called what you're talking about, the issues around Batabile Dlamini, Moyane, Mahlangu from the MEC, who were involved in the Life Esidimeni tragedy. They're calling it the tolerance of sustained immoral behavior. Is that fair? Is that how we now view it? Are we okay with it? Because it just happens so?
Well, I think one of the things that one must establish, as at least you had the Khamuseneke presiding over Esidimeni. So there is a pronouncement that is based on facts. And with Batabile, there's also pronouncement made by the courts. The question is whether the president has the courage to touch on those people with the constituency. And it could be that some people could see it that way. But he's a politician, and he has to balance what is politically feasible. Because if you push the slate too far, you might actually find yourself out. Remember, one of the things that he also said is that unity is very important. And within the ANC, there are quite a number of people who people could actually raise issues. And even with him, we've had stories around Bosasa. He still has to give a clear, categorical answer that does not shift from one week to another. So all those things are the realities that he must face.
As well as the issue on the ground, yes, within his own party, but that of coalition governments as well. We now know that it's Patricia de Lille who has come out with her new political party. We've got NUMSA who have come out with their new political party. And coalition governments, as we head into 2019, Professor, I imagine going to be even more influential next year than ever before.
Well, I think at the moment it doesn't seem like the ANC may need a coalition government. I think the 50+1 they will easily pass, because what is emerging on the ground is that because the opposition had banked on Jacob Zuma, now that is not there, they have not managed to find their feet in terms of what other message are you going to be able to give. This is why the Bosasa issue was for them a gift, but unfortunately it has disappeared at the moment. So you find the ANC that is trying to say, let's unify, let us send a message of renewal, but the people are saying, we would like to see a whole-scale cleaning. And if it's not going to happen, then it means that you're not actually serious.
And for the opposition parties outside of the ANC, those coalition governments, how do you see them trying to achieve what a true coalition opposition is meant to do for the ANC?
Well, the problem with the coalitions that have occurred, like the DA and EFF, is that ideologically they were not on the same page, and that's why they were not sustainable. It depended on the whims of the leaders at the particular time. I mean, there is nothing, the DA trollop has not changed. It is the EFF that changed. The things that he stood for, he always stood for those. But once the EFF changed its minds, not because anything material has changed, then the coalition collapsed. So it shows that any coalition that is not based on principle is not sustainable.
Prof, we only have a couple of minutes left on this. I would like to ask you about the DA's troubles. We've spoken about the ANC and what President Ramaphosa is doing there. The DA, it seems, going into next year's elections, even without coalition governments, without that complication of that, within their own party, there are many people who are going to argue that they simply don't know what they're doing anymore.
Well, that is very, very true. I mean, you have a party leader who seems to be going this way, but you have the core constituency of the DA that seems to have a mind of its own. And so effectively you have a party that is also not united. But if you look at Maimane and Ramaphosa, they actually speak the same language. This is why at one stage Maimane was saying actually the ANC has taken our policy. And if you listen to people who used to support the DA, they draw through their weight from somebody who looks like Maimane in the ANC. They have far greater chance of so-called co-opting Cyril Ramaphosa to their agenda. This is why somebody like Tony Leon could actually say he knows some of his friends who had actually given Cyril a lot of money. And he has also said Cyril Ramaphosa must be given a chance, because effectively in Cyril they see somebody who's taking a liberal perspective that Maimane is trying to advance. So effectively Maimane does not seem to have a message.
And it's that message that I'm going to pick up off now. We've been speaking very high-level politics, what's happening within each party, the coalition governments and the troubles within the DA and also the coalition governments. There are still issues on the ground. It's the voters or the non-voters. They are worried about two things, I think, Professor. One is electricity. Two is jobs, and I'm going to be at a third here. It is land expropriation. You cannot get away from that topic ahead of next year. Just how vital is that going to be for each of those political parties to get that right?
The land expropriation is very vital, and the ANC does not seem to come up with a clear message. When Cyril Ramaphosa talks to the investors, it is very clear that there'll be protection of property rights. It will be done seamlessly and constitutionally and legally. But when he speaks to the voters, there's a sense where he understands the militancy and the agency. So you have somebody who has mastered the art of doublespeak, but that is not sustainable. And what you are also saying in terms of the voters, which have been excluded in the whole equation, is that on a daily basis we have protests, and we ignore the protesters because it is not sexy enough. But those are the people who are going to send the message to the ANC comes election that you're not speaking to us. And of course, those who are going to talk about the EWC, the issue of land expropriation, you are going to find that parties like NUMSA, like you were mentioning, or their Socialist Party, might actually find traction because they're saying we're going to talk to the workers and we're going to unite the workers. And the ANC is beginning to lose that. And they're talking about electricity. Even business, you can have a PR relations with investment. But if you don't have energy security, nobody's going to invest in that. So what we have done in the last few months has been more PR than clear policy coming from the leadership.
I love the way you said that. We've had PR more than policy and leadership. Professor, thank you. We're going to continue to unpack this as we head through December. It's always a pleasure having you on the show.